Okay, so the first thing we're going to do, our topic today is how to design a proficiency-based curriculum in your department. And I've had three of my colleagues and friends volunteer to join us because they're all in different processes, in a different part of the process of redesigning their curriculum. So I told them, you know, they don't have to have all the answers. It's really just a sharing of what they're going through. So what I'd like to do first is just to have the three of you really quickly, just give a brief introduction, maybe just talk about the languages, how many teachers you have, et cetera. So Sarah, we'll go ahead and start with you.
Hi, I'm Sarah Morales, and I'm the curriculum manager for world languages at Cincinnati Public Schools. We offer about 10 languages, K-12. We have Arabic, Chinese, French, German, Ancient Greek, Korean, Japanese, Latin, Russian, Spanish, and I still feel like I'm forgetting something, but we have a variety of programs. We have one dual immersion Spanish elementary school. We have 4 plus programs with various languages. In our high schools, we offer level 1 through 3 and at least 1 language in all of our high schools, and are working on expanding access to languages and AP offerings because we only offer AP in 2 high schools at the moment. We're also trying to expand heritage language and investigating IB. There's about 100 teachers, and that's CPS World Languages in a nutshell.
All right, that's a lot. Okay, Betsy, go ahead from Solon.
Hi, good morning. My name is Betsy Beveridge, and I am a Spanish teacher at Solon High School, which is Northeast Ohio, suburb of Cleveland. I'm also the World Language Department Chair there. We are, let's see, next year we'll have 11 teachers at the high school. We offer 4 languages: American Sign Language, French, Chinese, and Spanish. Is that everything I need to say?
I think so. Yeah, I think that was it. We'll get some heavier stuff as we go into it. Okay, and Travis, go ahead. Okay.
Couldn't find my mute.
There you go.
Good morning. I'm Travis Murray, and I work at Mason City Schools. I'm a Spanish teacher and also the World Language Department teacher leader. And we have 17 world language staff members in our district, from middle school to high school, so 7th grade, 12th grade, and that's 5 languages there.
And what are your languages, did you say, Travis?
Yeah, ASL, French, German, Mandarin, and Spanish. Yep.
Yeah, okay, perfect, good. Okay, so what we're going to do now, the first topic, so as I said, I'm going to let the 3 of them talk about all 3 of the topics first. And I do have my little timer, so you have up to 5 minutes to talk. You don't have to talk the whole 5 minutes. And so participants, feel free to, like I said, put questions in the chat box, and after we're done, we should have about 15 minutes at the end to take some questions. So I guess, Sarah, I'll just start with you. So just talk about the process that you're going through. And I put questions on there. Everyone can read them. But Sarah, just talk about the process, you know, how you got into this.
Sure. I'm completing my 2nd year in this position, and we started this last school year in 18-19 school year. We had no district curriculum. We had a wide variety of materials and resources and a wide variety of teacher experiences and familiarity with the new standards. And so we set out to write some curriculum maps and guides that were based on our state and national standards. So we started that last school year with 1 map for high school level 1. We thought that was kind of like the starting point because everything needs to kind of grow in either direction from that. So we added in the 2nd year maps for high school level 2 and for our plus K-6 programs and for our heritage language program. So we've just finished those maps and finished updating with with the new standards, the high school maps, we're still working on updating the flex maps with the new standards. Kathy, am I supposed to talk through just the process right now, or should I kind of go into the resources? And
we're going to do that one separately if you don't mind. But if it
sure,
fits
no
out,
problem.
I'm sure we'll overlap. So if there's, you still have a few more minutes to talk. So if you want to add, feel free. Yep.
Yeah, just that I collaborated with my teachers to do it. We have a curriculum council that is a body of teacher leaders from each school in world languages, and so they were really instrumental in designing the curriculum maps and bringing their expertise to them. We did make them language agnostic, so we don't have like a separate map for each language that we teach. They're designed by proficiency level and based around the thematic units related to the intercultural standards, and scaffolding up to AP starting with level 1. The task that we're needing to update now is adding lots of blended resources so that if no matter which plan our board adopts, we're going to need to be all really good at blended learning and incorporating that technology, whether we have face-to-face time with our students or not. That's going to be huge. So that's a big update that we're doing right now.
Yeah, perfect. Okay, Travis, you want to jump in and talk about how you got started on your process, where you are, et cetera?
Sure. And I'm sorry I'm so late, flooded here. I'm in front of a window that I can't adjust. But anyway, so at Mason, similar to Sarah, we in recent years have not really had a clear direction, a clear map. And so we've taken a pretty slow and careful approach. So even though we're a couple years into this, redesign, as we're calling it, it's still in the early stages in my mind, in our mind. But our curriculum prior to this process was traditional, grammar driven, but really kind of in the weeds, not really seeing a big picture or knowing what our overall goal was. So no fault of anyone, just kind of the way we've always done things. I like to use the image of hanging fruit on a tree. So I'll describe that a little bit, but we were essentially kind of looking back on it. We were trying to get our students to produce fruit, and to do that, we were kind of hanging the fruit on the tree. And just like that kind of image suggests, it looks good for a bit, but then doesn't really last, right? So our goal, we started with our goal. What do we want our students to be able to do? What do we want? What kind of program do we want? And we wanted them to be able to produce their own language fruit that would be real and lasting and at their own pace. And we were also seeing that certain subgroups were not doing well. And so that was concerning to us. So we wanted to create a program that would cultivate students' proficiency, where they could create this real fruit, so to speak, on their own. And we know now, and we've learned through the process, is that's not only about language production, linguistic competencies, but as we're all growing in our understanding of also intercultural competencies. And so we know that at the end of the day, if we haven't addressed the intercultural part, then we will have failed. So we started with the end in mind, with that end goal, and we spent a good amount of time really talking about that. Why are we even doing this? What do we want at the end? And then we spent just the beginning stages. What were our initial steps? We spent a whole year actually trying to turn off everything we thought we knew. And we did research, we read books, and tried to kind of just be a new learner to this whole, what is language teaching? What do we know about language acquisition? And we surveyed students, we researched, we visited different schools, talked to different people. So that was really a whole year where we even, before we even did anything. So I can maybe, do I have a couple more minutes?
Yeah, you still got a couple minutes.
Okay. And so that was the first year. The second year, we really focused on what is proficiency, because we realized that that was a goal that we wanted. And so we needed to figure out what that was, what it was it what it wasn't. And we took an honest assessment of ourselves and realized that collectively we had very limited knowledge of what proficiency actually was, and how we could use our understanding of proficiency for the good of our students. So we spent that whole second year, and probably about 15 to 20 hours as a group, carefully going through ACFL's proficiency guidelines, each of the levels, sub-levels, and really digging into that pretty deeply that last year. And then we started into, with all of that couple years of knowledge and understanding, we moved into thinking about level 1 across all languages. So there's obviously more involved in that, but I'll pause there, I think.
Okay, perfect. Yeah, and I think you brought up some really good points. I'm looking at trying to sort of keep a look at an eye on the chat box, is that you brought up the point that this is not like a one-year process. I mean, you spent 2 years just trying to figure out what you want to do. And I think that's a great way that, what do we want it to look like? Think outside the box, that we may have to just rethink everything we've thought about language, especially like you said with the culture piece, and that it's not a quick process. It can take several years to do it. Great, perfect. Let's see, who didn't share? Betsy, go ahead.
Okay, so we're about in our 7th year now. We started back in June of 2013, right at the end of the school year. We had our first meeting about, what are these new standards? What do they look like? What is the IPA? How does that look to get to that in the classroom? We kind of just jumped feet first, dropped our textbooks and ran with it. And it was really hard. I mean, luckily we have, we work in PLC teams, and we really rely on each other, which has really, over these last 7 years, been a great thing. In the beginning, it was hard because we still had the grammar people that really were struggling with the new IPA and what it looked like and how are we doing this and how is that going to affect our AP students. So currently, 2 of the languages have picked up a textbook that they use as a more guiding resource, and Spanish and sign language still do not use any textbooks. We find all of our resources, our authentic sources online or in other resources that we look through. Before we made this transition, we were all textbook all the time. We followed it, unit by unit, grammar, vocab, whatever. But it wasn't, the typical authentic sources at that time. So really, I mean, the push was from some of the Spanish or some of the language teachers, but also our administration was a huge support. They were kind of like, okay, we're going to do this, so we're doing it. And I think without that push from our administrators, some of the teachers wouldn't have gotten on board because they were kind of set with, what they were doing, and which isn't wrong. I think over the last 7 years, what we found is we have to find a happy medium. So when we initially started, we were doing everything IPA style, like different tasks of IPA to get them ready for the test. And what does that look, we were constantly, what does that look like was really our big question. What does it look like in the classroom? We kind of were able to get a good grasp on the assessment and what we thought that would look like, but then how do we get them there? So we kind of went from one extreme to the other extreme. And over the 7 years, we found that we really have to bring it to the middle and find the best of both worlds to get the kids where they need to go. What else there? Yeah, the balance was a huge thing. I do remember one of our curriculum administrators saying, this process is going to take like 10 years. And we're like, what? And here we are 7 years later, still going at it. And every year we kind of re-meet and talk about where we are. We've kind of had some ups and downs, and our AP teachers really kind of pushed for us to go top down. While we know that not all the kids' goal is to go to AP, that is our ultimate goal. So we looked at, we actually had our AP teachers present, this is what the test looks like, this is what the kids have to be able to do, which was really helpful, I think, for all the teachers going down, because they didn't necessarily know what had to be done on the AP test. And well, they kept saying all the kids don't go there. Yes, that's true, but ultimately that is our goal, to get as many kids as we can, as far as we can. So this is, so I think that was super helpful, especially the new AP test. When it had changed, it also had, the interpersonal, interpretive, presentational pieces. So it really kind of lent itself into that. So I think
great. Thank you. That was wonderful. And a couple key things that I think you added on also is that, like you said, you're in year 7 of it, which Travis and Sarah are probably like, oh my gosh. but the thing is, it's not like it's a 7-year process and you haven't done it. It's just like being a teacher. You start off with your classroom curriculum, and then it's dynamic. It constantly changes. I love what you said, that you had to find a middle ground, because I agree, because no one's going to teach the same way, because we all have what we're comfortable with and what our strengths are. But as long as everybody has the same end goal, there's a lot of ways to get there. So I love that you said that. I actually went up to Solon, I think it was the 2nd year after you did this, and Betsy told me what they did. And I was like, oh my gosh, you guys are crazy. You just threw away the textbook. So it can be done, but I know it was a stressful process for them. So, but wonderful. Thanks all 3 of you. You just had great points. Okay. Let's go to number 2. So some of you sort of touched on this a little bit. And so Sarah, I'll just start with you again. So what are some of the resources? Like, did you have textbooks or the frameworks? How did you collaborate? I know you touched on this a little bit, but I'll give you some time here too. Go ahead.
Sure. So as far as textbooks, in addition to not having like a district-wide curriculum mapper guide, we also did not have district or even building-wide adopted resources, and we still don't, but we hope to be in the cycle for that sometime soon. But we really wanted our maps and guides to be aligned with the standards, not with a particular text, especially because we're dealing with so many different languages and so many different teaching styles. Some of our teachers don't use textbooks at all. Some of our teachers rely heavily on the textbook, but want to grow in their understanding of how to do that in a more proficiency-based way. So we are trying to, as we go along, add language-specific resource links to the maps, and that's where more of our the textbook materials that we have come into play, or readers that we have, or teacher-created resources that we have. A big resource that really helped us was the ODE website, and also a lot of the sample IPAs that OFLA provided. And then also we were really lucky to be able to sit down with the former chair of Jefferson County, Kentucky, and she shared very openly everything that they had developed, which was like, everything that we want to develop. So we had a great model to follow from Kathleen, and the collaboration was really essential. So when last school year, when we started the level 1 map, which was our starting point in 1819, literally it was me and Travis Yeager, who's on this call as well. Thank you, Travis. And 2 other teachers from a couple of other high schools in the district. And we met on Saturdays and we did all of this work. Last year, when we wrote 4 more maps, our team grew, and the people who felt like they could lead this work at each grade level really expanded. And that was really exciting to see, because we had, I think, about 15 teachers collaborating to get those maps done. And then the curriculum council that I mentioned is a teacher leadership group that our district has for every subject area, but our council has been really instrumental in moving this work forward. So even though teachers are at varying places with their comfort with the maps and guides and with the standards, our council has been very supportive and approving the maps and sharing with their colleagues. Our council representatives come from each building in the district, so they're able to take back information to the buildings and share information with us, so that it really helps us to spread the support.
Okay.
I think that's all.
Okay, that was good. You guys are good. There was, let me see, a couple things that you mentioned. Oh, the first thing is that you make the point about when you switch from a textbook, and there's nothing wrong with a textbook, because we know, especially in Spanish, when you have a lot of teachers, sometimes you just need a textbook to sort of give you the framework. But I like how all of you said the textbook is just a tool. The textbook can't be the curriculum, because what I like what you said was that when you start a proficiency-based curriculum, all of a sudden everybody can work together. It's not necessarily language specific. It can be like, okay, our goal is that the kids can compare this type of, holidays or whatever. Now, what would the resources look like? So that's one of the huge advantages, especially if you're a singleton teacher, like a lot of times French and ASL and German and stuff are singletons, is it gives you a chance to have collaboration with the other teachers and that giant framework. So that was excellent. I've seen the level 1 maps that Cincinnati has. They're amazing. I don't know, Sarah, if at some point that's something when you're done that, I don't know if there's some way to share, but those maps are very comprehensive. They're just very thorough. Sarah mentioned Jackie Van Houten from Jefferson County Public Schools, and they have actually created a resource, though I think you might have to pay for it now, and actually has a title. I'm going to have to think of it. If anyone can think of, if anyone knows in the chat box what it is, where you can actually access everything they have. Do you remember what it's called, Sarah? Do you know what, they actually started a website, and I can't remember what it is. There's your little partner.
No.
Okay, I'll think of it, and if I think of it, I'll add it when I post the chat. I'll add it. But okay, good. Let's jump on to, let's see who's next. Travis. So go ahead.
Okay. So a lot of similar resources as well that were mentioned, the ODE website, which, by the way, just want to throw it out to everyone. If you don't know, Kathy, really, and her small team does an amazing job supporting our state in world language. And this really hit home to me recently, because in interacting with leaders and world language folks in other states and hearing on podcasts and things that are national, Ohio was mentioned, the Ohio website for world language. So great job, Kathy. And so that's a great resource.
Labor of love.
And I know that's the fruit of a lot of people, not just you, Kathy, but you're certainly behind that. So thank you.
Thanks.
So one of the biggest resources that needs to be mentioned is time. And you really need to fight for time with your groups, with your team, with your people. We had the great advantage, I guess, of having three carved out times a week with our departments. Now, I know that can sound like, ugh, 3 department meetings a week, but it wasn't a meeting. It was time for us to do what we needed to do, what we wanted to do. And it was short amount of time. And so we really used that time well. But then our district also was great in giving us lots of pull-out time to work on this. So time is a huge resource that goes, without mentioning, that can't get much done without time. But another thing too is that when you have the time with your groups and your teams, it needs to be used well. And as a new leader in my department, I needed help to know how to manage time well when I have 17 teachers with different experience, with different opinions and strong emotions involved, and decisions that affect everybody's day to day. And if you know anything about those three things. That's a cocktail for a challenge, right? And so one of the resources that I'll share is a book, it's a manual really, called Tool Time for Education. It has nothing to do with world language, but it really changed our work together of the last couple years. And it's a tool for how to gather input from your groups, how to make decisions, how to make sure everybody's feeling like their ideas are valued. And there's tons of things in there. I haven't even cracked the surface, but it's been great. I'll post a link if I can somehow
that'd be
to
great.
that resource.
In the chat box.
Tool Time for Education, it's called. So ACTFL's been another huge resource for us in these initial years. And then let's see, other resources just on the kind of the conceptual level, not so much in class yet, haven't talked about that, but the can-dos from that are posted on ODE's site, obviously the new standards as well. But then there's another great resource from ACTFL that we've used called the Keys to Planning for Learning, which is just awesome, has a lot of great just solid practices in terms of how to plan well with all of this in mind, backward planning. And then Terry also is on this. I saw her. Terry Wiekert is also heavily involved, as you all probably know, in our state and national level even. So she's been a great resource to us as well. We spent some time with her, and you can sit at Kathy's feet for any amount of time. It's time well spent, and Terry as well. You can just glean tons of ideas and just a good kind of soundboard as well for them. And then we're in the early stages when it comes to resources kind of at the curriculum level, but we have pretty much all but dropped textbooks and have really moved to kind of what is, a menu of things out there that we can curate, and as Sarah, I think, mentioned, kind of link into our developing maps for different languages and so on for our students, whether it's an authentic piece or whatever. So I don't foresee us returning to traditional kind of textbook resource, though you never know, but we use a lot of different things right now, and I'm sure that will develop too as we move forward into the process further. Let's see if I forgot anything on my list. I think I'll stop there for
Okay,
now.
that was wonderful, Travis. A couple of great things that Travis mentioned. Number one, like you said, is time. And he's right, you really do, and Sarah mentioned this too, is that you really do need the administrator support to really help get everyone on board, to get that time, that pull-out time, because that's so difficult, as we all know. It's so hard to get that time. I think, yeah, Travis, if you want to, did you put that book? Yeah, if you want to put that in the chat box, I think you can put it in there. I think Travis and Sarah both mentioned the same thing, and Betsy earlier too, is that, again, it gets back to, there's a lot of emotion involved in the way we teach. Because like I said, we all, especially, if you've been teaching a long time, you know what works for you intuitively. So it is that we do need to be careful that we are, it sounds sort of social emotional, but it's very true that you really need to validate, okay, what do you think, what's going on here? It's really it's like a culturally responsive teaching. It's like a cultural competence thing, that you know and understand the culture of your department. Different languages have different, you have the spoken languages versus the visual languages like ASL, and you have Latin, which is a little bit different. So again, acknowledging that there's different types of languages, there's different feelings, there's different methodologies, and as long as you all have that ultimate goal, it is a process of validating and acknowledging that there are going to be differences, but we're all going to get to the same place. Wonderful. Betsy.
Okay, I'm probably going to echo a lot of what was already said, but
that's good.
I think that one of our biggest resources was each other. And like Kathy said, validating what everybody's feeling at the time, because it is it's hard. It's a hard process getting everybody on board, and I think without the support of our administration saying that you're moving forward, then, you know, it would have been a little bit more difficult. So, and we still, you know, we still have some struggles, but I think leaning on each other with your strengths, and, you know, we have some teachers that are great at finding resources. I mean, super fast. They're like, and they're great resources. So, you know, just finding the strengths of each other. When I had started this, I was also newer as a department chair. And one of my things was I am leading you, but I'm leading with you. I don't feel like I'm like the boss of everybody and telling everyone what to do. I think that I need everyone's strengths to help. You know, we're truly a team, and we worked over the years to kind of create that team. And I feel like we've come a long way in that sense. So I think our biggest resource at the time was ourselves, because ODE had great resources and they were just starting to put out the first model curriculum. So we did lean on them a lot too. And I think with our curriculum design, we followed one of the templates that you had put out is where we started putting all of our curriculum that we kind of would revisit every 1 or 2 years to make sure we're still doing the same thing. Because like I said, we had some dips and things, and, you know, we were worried about, you know, the kids that were in AP, were they learning everything they needed to learn to be successful? Because without having a textbook, we didn't have a framework. And so we did kind of figure things out that way. Let's see, what else? That's what I have the model curriculum for templates. Oh, we also created our own charts and tables where like certain things like keywords or transition words, and we kind of made little tables of where we thought those fit best. Language use or grammar, you know, we started making tables of where those were fitting in so we could see what we were missing, and the things that they needed to know, where we could fit it in best with, you know, the topics and themes that were being taught. I think that was super helpful too, the tables that we had created with different things on them. And we could just on one page see who's doing what. So, and we did that, I think, with ultimately with the AP themes and topics, kind of seeing what we did, what we were doing, what was being taught in each different level. So.
Yeah, you mentioned some really good things, Betsy. Number one is just if you're on this, and whether you're the one who's going to be leading the process in your department, or you're just someone who's participating, leadership is not easy, and it is because, you know, we're all professionals, and it's hard to be a leader when you're with your colleagues. There's some books that are very helpful. There's the 7 Habits of Highly Effective People. I highly recommend to everyone to read, not just if you're like the department chair or whatever, but it really just shows how do we work together, how do we validate, how do we acknowledge everyone's strengths. And I think Betsy makes a good point also about to lean on each other, because world languages, we all know, we're all sort of shoved in the corner, and, you know, and it even happens sometimes, you know, it just happens, I think, with a lot of us, is that there's other areas that tend to get focused on more than world languages. And if we don't have each other's back, we're sort of out there alone. Those of you who are out there and who are like the only teacher in your building, if you're like a smaller district or something like that, you know, reach out to ODE, and I can always connect you. I've worked with a lot of districts who are going through this process, and everyone's saying the three people who are talking today, it's the same process, that it's very organized, it's very intentional. You really have to think about it. I noticed a couple things. I'm looking at the chat box as we're going. Travis put his link in for that, for your book from Leslie Gran. If any of you had gone to Leslie's, we did a meetup with Leslie back in April, and she's amazing. And she also wrote the Keys to Planning from ACTFL, and I agree with Travis 100%. Yes, you have to pay for the book, but Leslie, if you've ever seen her Gran for Lang, she's amazing. So I also put a link in there about the TEL project, which has a bunch of different lists that says, what does a proficiency-based curriculum look like? What do lessons look like? What does student participation look like? So those are fantastic also. So just some great, great resources. And anyone else who, if you're like, oh, this is something we use and you want to put it in the box, feel free to do that. Okay, let's go to the last one, the fun topic, which you've all sort of alluded to anyway. So this is now the challenges. So what are, some of you mentioned them already, but if maybe you want to get a little more specific. So Sarah, you want to go ahead and start? So challenges and advice you would give to someone who's redesigning.
Sure. I think the first challenge is kind of what you were mentioning, Kathy, about, you know, the relative value that's given to world languages in comparison to other subjects in the district. So, for instance, my role in the curriculum department was just created in 1819. Before that, it had been an add-on to the ESL manager because we have a very large and growing ESL population, which also meant that that manager, despite her passion and best intentions, is dealing with, you know, compliance issues for this growing population. So really there hadn't been a focus on it in the district for, I would say, decades. So we were really starting from scratch. Our amazing teachers had been out there on their own, perfecting their craft and doing their best, but ended up going in a lot of different directions. So trying to bring us all back into the fold and decide what our common priorities are and how we can all use our various areas of expertise and learn from each other to really make it strong. As Travis was saying, emotions run high. People are very committed to what they've always done that's always worked for their students. And I value that so much, but at the same time, we need to think about what our definition of working for students is. Like, students are having fun in class and they're engaged and everything's going great, but are they becoming proficient in the language? Are they continuing on to advanced studies? So these are the kind of conversations we've been having. What is our ultimate goal for our students? And the district has been increasing support, so that's great. We have support from the district, but it's still not the same as being your math or your language arts, right? So that's always a challenge, you know, like the focus always kind of goes to those traditional core subjects. But we are getting more and more support for what we're trying to do as time goes on. For my background in teaching, I actually spent most of my time teaching as a TESOL teacher. And so one huge challenge for me personally, and then rolling down to teachers in the district who are trying to embrace the new standards, is that in the world of world languages, comprehensible input is like this faction or this you know, political movement almost, whereas in English as a second language, comprehensible input is just one of the things that you must have for second language acquisition. And so it's not controversial. Like, we all know that students need this. And a challenge for me has been to help teachers who aren't necessarily wanting to abandon their textbooks and join this cutting edge group known as CI in the world language arena, that we still need to work on providing comprehensible input to our students. Like, comprehensible input is not necessarily, doesn't need to be a emotionally charged issue. It's just a good component of second language acquisition. And you can do that with a textbook or with anything else. So for me personally, that's been a huge challenge. And we're also, you know, working with implementation. And so listening to Betsy in year 7 and thinking about what she's still going through, Travis, from my district, Travis Jaeger and I were just texting like, 10 years? Okay, 10 years. But that kind of helps to manage expectations for how long it's going to take to really get that true implementation. We have our early adopters, of course, in the district who are already running with it, or they've already basically been teaching what's in the curriculum maps before there were curriculum maps. And then we also need to just have that time and support for teachers who this is a completely different way of looking at curriculum and it's really new. And that kind of ties in with the last challenge that I'll mention, which is time with our teachers. In a large district like Cincinnati Public, there are so many required professional developments, and they're all important and they are all necessary, and teachers spend a lot of time getting PD, but by the time everything shakes down, we don't get that much time to do content specific professional development on world languages topics. I think that's all.
Okay, good. I think, shoot, what was it now that I lost? I was going to say that you had mentioned. Oh, I know. All three of you mentioned how you sort of looked at whether it was AP or sort of what's the goal at the end of 4 or 5 years of the language, even if all the kids aren't going to get there. And so all of you sort of backward designed from there, but then when you were doing the implementation, it was sort of easier to start then with level 1. So it's not like you just started level 1 and you're building up. You already know what you're building toward. But you started with level 1 because what has happened, and I know, Travis, we've talked about this also, and I think Sarah, we did too, is that if you started at level 1 and you're really following the new curriculum map, if people know what is going to be coming in level 2, 3, and 4, they're starting to already do that. So every year it gets a little bit easier. And by the time you get to like that 4th year of implementation, a lot of teachers are already there because it's been building. So I think that's a good point, that you have to design with the end in mind. But a lot of times it's easier to start with level 1 and sort of change as you go up. Travis, you want to talk about challenges and advice?
Sure. So one thing that has been a challenge, just going off of what Kathy just talked about, was AP. All through this process, even from the beginning, we would hear from ourselves, what about AP? What about AP, as we kind of were looking at what seemed to be mounting to a paradigm shift that seemed to be round peg square hole, at least in terms of when it comes to proficiency levels and where students can realistically be after a certain amount of instructional hours. And Mason, we have decided with administrative support that AP is not the end goal for our students or our program. That has been pretty significant and drops heavy on some that aren't sure how to handle that. But we also aren't trying to forsake AP, because we know students are going to take AP. So it is a very careful balance we're playing. But we also know that, you know, at a given moment in October, 8% or so of our students are in an AP class, and we have 92% or whatever that are not. And the percentage is very high of students who are not going to go on to AP. And so we want to serve those students and help them to reach their highest level of proficiency. And by flowing backward from AP, we're not going to do that. We're going to force students, at least in our context, we've determined we're going to force students to do things and put fruit on their tree that they're not ready to grow yet, frankly. And so we are doing backward planning, but we're backward planning from the proficiency goal at each level, but also backward planning from our overall goal of helping students reach their highest level of proficiency and gaining their highest level of intercultural competency as well. So that's just an ongoing challenge, because it's still hard to shake for some teachers, and also the challenge of, well, what about the students that are going on? And so we have some answers to that within ourselves, but it's not the time for that now. But the other couple of challenges that we've come is that a lot of teachers kind of find themselves like, okay, yeah, this is great. Let's get to work. Let's talk vocab, let's talk grammar. What are we doing? And so I've had to constantly kind of help everybody slow down and help everybody see, look, we're putting these big rocks into the vase, if you will. I don't know if you've all seen that. What's that called? The sand and rock illustration online, where you know, you put all the little things in, but then there's not room for the big important rocks. But if you dump everything out, that's what we've been doing, put the big stuff in, the most important stuff first, there's room for all the little stuff and more. So Google that if you haven't seen that. Shut me down, Kathy, if I'm going
Probably
too long.
maybe about 30 seconds here. Maybe one more
Okay.
thing, Travis.
Just one takeaway, one thing to try if you're in your department or you're a leader, or you have a chance to have a say in what you do sometime. Try creating a working definition of something that you're talking about. So maybe you're like Sarah mentioned, I think what's working for students. What does that mean? What do we mean by proficiency? What do we mean by homework? When you have everybody write down what they mean when you're talking about some word or something, you're going to get, in our case, 17 different definitions. And if you can come together on what you're all talking about, your productivity and your efforts will go further. So just one little thing that could help overcome some challenges there too.
Great. Those are great conversations and thoughts on that, Travis. Betsy, go ahead. A challenge and advice, and then we'll open up to some questions.
Okay. I guess the biggest challenge we had 7 years ago when we first started was getting everybody on board, because we kind of did just dive right in. So a piece of advice of that is really hearing everybody in your department, not just letting them voice their concern, but hear it and kind of act on it, because we do a lot of collaboration and we have lots of conversations, and you can't get your feelings hurt in those conversations. It's not personal. It's just work. I mean, so I think letting everybody have these great conversations. We have a lot of great teachers, and listening to each other really has, over the years, helped us grow and get better every year. I mean, there's no end. You just, every year we meet once a week in our PLCs, and we have after school meetings once a month or twice a month, and we're constantly talking, and we're constantly looking to make it better and improve and changing. And I think, letting people know change is coming, and it's just going to keep happening, and getting comfortable with change is a hard thing. But ever since I've been in Solon, I mean, even before I was the department chair, we were constantly changing every year, improving, and looking at things and how can we make it better. So that's one thing. Just acknowledging that the process is that it's not going to happen overnight. It's a process. It's baby steps. Every time you look at something, you're moving forward, and that's what you're doing. You're just going to keep moving forward through the process, and there's, like I said, there's no end. So you just keep going. I think I mentioned before, relying on each member as, for their strengths, because everybody has their strengths, and, including everybody in the process, making sure everybody is heard. So I think that's really all of my notes.
Great. Okay. I'm going to try and get as many questions in the chat box as I can, and I'll just throw it out, and then one of you, the three of you can answer. And I think what I'll do then is after, first off, if you want to save the chat, down at the bottom where you post, there's 3 little dots. If you click on that, you'll see a link that says Save Chat, and I'll save it too and post it. Everything is posted on the ODE page, where the distance learning page, where the schedule is. That's where all the links, like the recordings and everything, is on there. And yesterday's recording is already up. So any question we can't get to today, I will send out to the 3 teachers, to Travis and Sarah and Betsy afterwards, and I'll add it to the chat. So because we have a lot of good questions. Here's one though that I want to go. It's from Elisa, and she says, I'm wondering about the emphasis on not using a textbook. It's like reinventing the wheel. Is a proficiency-based curriculum and use of a textbook mutually exclusive? Can they coexist? How do students at lower levels respond? So how do you marry that proficiency and no textbook or using the textbook? So if one of you wants to, Betsy, maybe that might be you, since you sort of were the burn the textbook group.
Yeah, that's been difficult. Like I said, we just dropped the textbook, and I think though what we did was we kind of looked at what we were teaching and kind of tried to incorporate authentic pieces with what we were already doing at the time. And then we went to the themes and the topics that were being presented by ODE and AP, and we tried to see where they fit. And then we went into essential questions. What do we want them to be able to do at the end of this unit? What's our communication goal? How can we produce that communication goal through, you know, the different modes of communication? I think we just ended up working backwards. I'm not sure if I'm answering all the questions. There were so many.
It was just basically how do we marry textbook, like without basically getting overwhelmed, I think, because it is hard if you just throw away the textbook. So I think that was sort of the question.
Yeah, it really was. I think using the textbook for the benefits that it has, which, you know, they do have some authentic sources in there. They have, you know, the grammar pieces you need to build on. I think those are, you know, essential to moving forward, and having that structure of the textbook really helps build the curriculum. But
no, I think that's good. I'm going to throw this one out. This is from Carrie. What do you do? Carrie's a lone teacher. She's on her own and she wants to sort of redo her curriculum. And Betsy, you mentioned about having an AP teacher come in and show what to do, but maybe Sarah or Travis, what would you think that, let's see, she says, what do you use as an end goal when you're working toward begin planning? And what do you suggest to a teacher who's sort of a singleton? So Sarah or Travis, either one of you want to jump in on that one? That's a tough one. Yeah, Travis, go ahead, thanks.
Okay. So end goal, singleton teacher, just kind of getting started with, yeah. I think a good place to start is what is the proficiency level that you want your students to achieve at the end of a given level? Is it novice low, novice mid, novice high? And if you're new to those, spend a little time learning about what those are and what those mean. And then Ohio has a great kind of chart that kind of does the work for you to kind of say where typically students should be after an X number of instructional hours. So from then, and this is the process we used, you kind of go next level and what are the can-dos that relate to that, and Ohio has them really nicely laid out for you to take a look at. So I think that's probably a good starting point.
Good, thanks. Sarah, did you have anything you wanted to add to that?
I was getting some input from my coworker here.
Oh, good. That's how you're texting in there, yeah.
Yeah, in that. So I think just networking with other colleagues and using those resources in the ODE model curriculum. I think in some ways it's very hard to be by yourself, but in some ways that seems like an amazing opportunity to decide what your program is and run with it. You don't have to get all these different folks and their emotions and politics of the district on board. It's your class, right? So you're writing your lesson plans and you can decide what you want them to reflect.
Good. All right, I am checking the question box.
Can I
here.
say one thing too?
Of course, jump in. Yeah.
I think that our goal for each level is to make sure that they're leaving successful for the next level. So whatever you're planning in each level, your goal is to make sure they're successful in that next level when they leave your level. Does that make sense?
That makes total sense. Yeah. So, and I think Travis, I think that's sort of what Travis was talking about, is that yes, there's aligning to the AP, but really when you think about the redesign of the AP is now what we're all doing anyway. So whether it's AP specific or not, it is the three modes, the intercultural competence, the ability to just grow across your proficiency level. And I think Travis mentioned that in the model curriculum, and all three of you have mentioned some things that I want to point out again, is that I put it in the box. If you look in the model curriculum for world languages, there's content elaborations where we list a bunch of different themes and topics and essential questions, all the way from novice low, all the way up to advanced low. So that's helpful. The can-do statements are in there. The new standards, which I said we're going to, that's the next session. We have tons of examples. What else did you guys mention? I forget what else you mentioned, but yeah, so there's some stuff in there that you can help. or that can help you. I'm looking at the questions. I think we can do one more question really quickly. Oh, here we go. I like this last one from Anna. How do I get buy-in from the administrators to modify to more proficiency? And this is a great question about how do you get not necessarily just the teachers, but principals who aren't familiar on board. Who wants to jump in on that one? How do you get your administrators on board? Yeah, Sarah, go ahead.
Well, just to be clear, I am the administrator, but I do work with principals, so I'm going to
we'll go for the principal, I think,
more from the principal buy-in perspective.
I think so, yeah.
It's pretty challenging because even principals who, you know, have some experience with learning world languages in the past mostly have studied it in a traditional grammar-based way. And so kind of getting them to wrap their head around the concept of proficiency and what instruction looks like to get students there is challenging. One thing that we did in our district is we created a tool called Evidence of Success. So it has, you know, what teacher behaviors and what student behaviors would look like to show that what's happening in, let's say, a level 1 classroom where maybe students aren't really ready for a high level of output yet, to see what are those look fors for student engagement and monitoring growth, and just getting them familiar with proficiency as a concept and as a goal.
And I think you hit it, because a lot of times our administrators who aren't familiar think of it again as the vocab and the grammar and the content, when it's really more than that now. And I see a lot of people are putting in there great examples. And again, now that we've redesigned the standards, and the standards are completely proficiency based, I mean, it's literally, you can say, here's the state standards if we're going to follow the standards. Okay, I see it is 10:15, and I want to give you a break in between if you're going to hang out for the second session. If you're not, that's okay. So a couple questions came up. So if you need, I'll put the link in again for the how to get contact hours, and you just, so, and when you go into the contact hour thing, you can fill it out once, or you can keep going back in. You're able to keep submitting, and then I just get the spreadsheet, and I'll check like at the end of the week. So when you go in there, it'll say like, I attended June 23rd this, June 24th that, or whatever. So if you filled it out once, if you haven't checked the box, you have to go back in and check the second box. But at any rate, so that's how you do that. So I'm going to go ahead and thank Betsy and Sarah and Travis. If you're comfortable with it and you want to put your emails in the chat box, feel free. If you're comfortable with people like reaching out to you. I didn't want to do it. I didn't want to make an assumption. But you guys had some great information. Like I said, if you're going to hang out for the next session, you don't have to sign out. It's the same link as this one, and we're going to switch over. But I just want to thank all three of you. And again, if you put questions in the chat box that we didn't get to, I'll follow up with the three teachers, and we'll get back to you on that. All right. Thanks, everybody. And we'll take a little 15-minute break, and we'll meet back at 10:30. Thanks, you guys.
Thank you, Kathy.
Yep.
Thanks, everyone.
Yep. Thanks for having us. It was a pleasure.
Thank you. You were all wonderful. Appreciate it.
Hey, Kathy.
Yes. Yeah.
What is the next session you're doing?
I'm going over the new standards.
The new standards. Okay.
So the new framework for the standards. I think you're,
Gotcha.
So you're welcome to stay if you want, or if you're like, I think.
Is it on this link?
It's on the same link. Yeah, it's the same meeting link. So you don't have to sign out. Yeah, all the meetups are actually just on the same link. So that way we can, it makes it easier.
Yeah, I may listen in. Might have my kids on board, but.
Yeah, that's okay. Yeah, good. Okay. Yeah, we'll do that in
Thanks
about
again.
15 minutes. Yep.
Kathy,
Yes.
I have a quick question that I didn't get a chance to ask, but is there any particular tool that that departments will use to physically create their curriculum maps and their curriculum work? You know, the few of them talked about keeping databases and keeping documents and all of that, but is there a great tech tool or something out there for that?
I have a tool that who is this? I didn't see.
I'm sorry, it's Callie Hunt, and I just realized my video is not on.
Okay, I thought it was you, because yours the only one that was like, didn't have the mute on it. Kelly, let me put a link in there. Sarah, put her coworkers are growing impatient. I have a link. It's some Google Docs that I use when I go out and when I was allowed to do face-to-face PD. And in it are some templates for designing curriculum. Let me, hang on, let me go on my other computer here. I got 2 of them going. Let me find that link and put it in there for you. And basically what it is it's that the content elaboration thing that I mentioned in the model curriculum. It's that same type of thing where it's just what's the essential question, et cetera. But let me, hang on for a second. Let me go on my other, computer and find this for you.
Because I've already gone through like all of the ODE content elaborations and sort of matched all
okay,
that.
Okay, so you're good with that.
Levels, yeah. And I kind of have my own like Google Sheets
yeah,
document. But I didn't know if there was anything else that might be really helpful with, especially once you start curating all the different things into it.
Yeah. Let me send you, because this is one that wasn't like if it to be on the ODE website, it has to be like ODE approved. And this is just one we use in our, that I use in my workshops that teachers can access. I'm going to put it in the chat box right now.
Oh, perfect.
And then just copy that link. So if you go to that, and then when you get in there, you'll see, which is the, actually, you know what, if you go, there's a folder in there that's called WCS, which is actually, I did this for Westerville schools, but I think you can access it too, is, hang on for a second, trying to get in there and look around and see what I got in there. So if you go into the WCS, that number 4, do you see where it says vertical alignment brainstorm? If you got in there.
Number 4, let's see, can-do statements, reflection.
Oh, sorry. When you're in the workshop, at the top, there should be a folder that says WCS.
Oh, I didn't see the folder at the top.
Yeah, that was for a district that I did, and so I stuck it in there. But if you go in there and look at number 4, where it says vertical alignment brainstorm.
Yep.
I put on, it was just something we did together, and it was literally, we took one of the content elaboration topics.
Okay.
And then what we did is they put like ASL, what they were going to do for ASL, for French, for different languages. So that's one of them. But there's another one. There's another one in there though that I want to show. Hang on for a second. Let me find it. Where is that one? Maybe it was. Let me check number 3. Yes, go back to the main folder and look at number 3 where it says handout design intercultural units. Do you see that one?
Yeah, let me get back to that folder. Okay, I'm sorry, which one? The
number 3 where it says design, I think it says design intercultural units. It's not in, I'm sorry, it's not in the WCS folder. It's actually beyond in the main, the first one.
In the main folder. Okay, number 3, handout design. There, that one.
Yeah. So that's just one. It's not perfect, but it's what was another starting point where in this one, like if you were going by, depending on how you set it up, where they went with, okay, what's my theme and my outcome for unit 1? And then what's my proficiency goal? And then what am I going, what's my outcome? So if the theme for, that's just something I give teachers to start with. Like I said, if you can take a look at Sarah Morales, if you can email her and ask her for their maps, they're a little complex, but they're also very thorough.
Right.
The Cincinnati Public ones are just ridiculously good. And so, yeah, and ask her about the framework because I thought hers was it was very systematic. It was very accessible, I thought.
Okay, that would be great. And then one last question that I thought of was, do you know, is anybody in Ohio, is anybody doing their courses, by proficiency level rather than just by like level 1, 2, 3, 4?
Yeah, the only one who is working towards that that I know of, I'm not saying that there aren't other, is Upper Arlington does something like that where, and they had like a lot of, it took them a while to get there, but it was where once the kids hit a certain level, they could move on to the next one. And if they didn't hit it, they couldn't move on. So I would reach out at Upper Arlington. I don't know if Trisha's on here or not, but Trisha Fellinger, I'm not sure if she's the department chair, but I've known her for years and she's very familiar. So Trisha Fellinger at Upper Arlington, she's, I think, a German teacher. I'm sure you can get her email off the address.
Yeah.
They're the only district I'm aware of that is doing that.
Okay,
because, you know, the logistics of the reality versus, you know,
right. I was just
Yeah.
curious because we were, we're talking about lots of different things, and I thought I would just see if anybody's doing that. But
Yeah.
thank you so much for this. This is really helpful.